Hello, my name is Desiree Vest, and today is December 10, 2017. So I just ate a cheeseburger right now, and I'm going to describe what happens to my digestive system. There are 8 steps that happens. The first step is ingestion. This means I will be taking the food into my body by swallowing it, but first the food will be entering the body through the mouth, where I will begin chewing the food, breaking it down. The salivary glands also take part in this process, where the saliva will help break down the food. The last part of the step is when we are done chewing the cheeseburger, some of the food turns into somewhat of a ball, which is also called a bolus, which then goes into our pharynx. The pharynx will close off the trachea so that the food does not go into our windpipe, which then leads us to step 2, which is the esophagus. Now that we're entering step 2, all of the functions become autonomic. This means that they pretty much work on their own and there is no direct control to them. For step 2, the food goes through the esophagus, still breaking down, making its way by peristalsis to the stomach. We are now reaching step 3, which means the bolus is now entering the stomach. Here in the stomach, the bolus is introduced to the gastric acids that will further break down the food, separating the nutrients from it. After the bolus is properly broke down, the food, we begin to enter step 4, which it goes into the small intestine. The small intestine is made up of 3 segments: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Here in the small intestine, further breakdown of the food is still occurring. This is mostly happening in the duodenum. Peristalsis occurs in the small intestine as well, helping move everything along. The small intestine gets help from the pancreas and the liver as well as the gallbladder, which provide bile to help break down our food. The jejunum and the ileum start absorbing all of the nutrients from the food and carrying it into the bloodstream. The leftover waste from the food leads us to step 5, which is the large intestine. In the large intestine, any water in the waste is absorbed and the concentration of stool occurs. Stool is the waste left over from the digestive process. The stool continues through the large intestine, where it then waits to be evacuated by the rectum, which is step 7. But let's go back to talk about step 6. So step 6 is the appendix. So we all believe that the appendix has no purpose, and when it bursts it hurts really bad. But despite common belief, the appendix does have somewhat of a purpose. Vitamin K is produced here, and minor digestion occurs. So now anyone who tells me that the appendix does not have a purpose, I like to point this out to them, that it actually does. So now we're going to go back to step 7, which is the rectum. So the rectum is the chamber that connects the large intestine to the anus. The rectum gets the stool from the large intestine and stores it until it is ready to be evacuated. Once the stool enters the rectum, sensors within the rectum and messages to the brain, which then decides when the contents will be released, which leads us to our final step, which is the anus. So this is the 8th step. Once the brain decides it is ready to evacuate the stool, the sphincters will relax, and the rectum will contract, pushing the stool out of the anus, which concludes the digestive system. Thank you.